Da da da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. If you've never popped into one of my lives before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. We're going to give YouTube a couple of minutes, get those notifications out, let people know I've gone live. In the meantime, you guys, I am up to here with Stoicism. Are you kidding me? It's always been on those, I run on values. I'm a true believer. It takes all kinds to make the world. And this world is a little bit crazy town these days, and not everybody is there. But you can see these souls surfacing and just crashing, right? That's how desperate people are in wanting to show up, to make a little bit of difference in this world. Even for myself, I was watching yesterday. Was it yesterday? The day before? I watch a lot of. It takes all kinds to make the world. I was listening in on a conversation. Conversation? No, it was a lesson, and it was by Rabbi Jacobson. Yes, a rabbi. And in all honesty, I didn't find out until my grandfather passed away, but my grandfather was Jewish on my father's side. At least that's the feedback that we're getting across the line, because none of us are really paying attention to those bloodlines that we are mixing up in different cultures, right? When I was growing up, and I've told this story a few times, because I grew up in an age as a child, right? And as a child, being a spectator, because that was the way I was programmed, I was paying attention. I would truly was paying attention. I really recognize, right? This, what did they call it? Love, sex, rock and roll, peace, love, right? It was the era of the hippies. It was Woodstock. It was the Beatles, right? Learning about Hinduism and meditation, and it was people experimenting with LSD and marijuana. It was the children from the couplings of the Second World War, right? That relief. There's always a baby boom after the wars. There always is. A little bit before. That's because you're going off to sea. So of course, husbands are going to try and knock their wives up so that they behave. This is the way I think I have been in. I have been in those circles. I know how women work. I have as a spectator and as a student, because it's in my choices to be a student, to learn by that, right? Or to join in on that. But because I was going to say not part of that in crowd, but I don't know how I did it. I managed. I managed to get myself in groups, and it wasn't my intent, I don't think. Though it was amazing, and it would have been something I would have loved to have been a part of, but I was never in that in group, that it group, that beautiful people. And it just so happened, that over the course of the years, and in gaining a little bit of independence, a little bit of confidence, a little bit of assuredness in my feet, that I was able to make friends. And I am grateful for the friends that came across my path, because that was the beginning. You know what I mean? It just takes one more, and you can have a village, can't you? It might only be a village of two, but it's a village. It's a connection, and you never know. And it's not always a good thing, in all honesty, because we're not good judges for ourselves, for the friends that we bring into our lives, right? So you are bumping up with human souls that are friends of your human soul, that one person that you pick to be a part of your village. So that influence that that person's having with you, whether it's a man or a woman, it's like that luggage that you drag into a relationship, right? Those past husbands, those past wives, those past boyfriends or girlfriends. Those are patterns that carry on from one relationship to another, right? You know, uh, something came to my mind, but not appropriate for in this moment, so I'm going to ignore that. Okay, let's come back to the main branch of the tree. So where did I start off here? Okay, we started off with the Stoics, didn't we? Right? Delving into their content. I'm delving in now, okay? I've come across the lessons. They come across my path. Some of my favorite thought leaders out in the world, people that I admire, people I'd like to emulate myself off of a little bit, right? Because Cindy's a unique, each one of us is unique. I want to do it my own unique way. But when you resonate with content, you're resonating with the content, right? And the person who is divvying out that content, right? You have to feel into the presenter. You know what I mean? Because you don't know where those sources are. You don't know who the source is truly is. It takes a long time. I have my favorites that I like to take my lessons from, They have served me well. And if I ever had a chance to reciprocate that kindness that they're not even aware that they're bestowing upon me, I would gladly and I would insist, right? But in the moment, things are what they are. And I trust that in my little drummer girl that I find ways to give back in in a way that doesn't truly cost me, right? I keep myself under that consideration to the best of my ability. I decided today that I am going to get a checkup, right? In creating the best human being I possibly can, I have to recognize where I have let myself down, where possibly I have neglected to pay attention in something that just doesn't serve me, but serves those other parts of me. And not only that, right, it allows me to show up and serve here at the same time. So it's important, right? And it's just not the other parts of me are saying, okay, we're going to the doctor. And it's not me having that tough love. It's just me recognizing where possibly I may have neglected. There's a reason things work out the way they do. There's a reason for that. I am grateful in this moment to recognize that everything is going to be okay. But a lot of people would look at my situation and say, well, talk about crazy town, right? You just up and off and quit your job, and right? How are you going to put a roof over your head? Well, sometimes in the circumstances, and if I was listening to myself, this would have been something I was working. And in my mind, I was working on it, and in the planning and in the opportunity for what I wanted to do, right? I did manage to make arrangements in something I knew had to happen, but I procrastinated in that. And it should have been something I'd done a year ago, but there were so many aspects in that job that put the roof over my head that I truly, truly loved, right? And it was putting a roof over my head, and it was allowing me to schedule my life in a way that made it possible that I could spend time with my sisters if I chose to, that I could spend some time in Mother Nature, even if it was just going for a walk or heading up to the park, right? It gave me an opportunity to work on my brand. It gave me an opportunity to save and set goals and create those amazing September holidays, right? And I've got it in my head, right? Renting that vehicle for that holiday is just too darn expensive. We're going to get a car. And that was the plan, right? And I started working towards the car. But in the end, that really wasn't the plan. God says you're saving money. Cindy says I'm saving money for a car. But really, I was left out of that one. You're actually just saving so you could put a roof over your head for a couple of moments, right? A couple of months. And I am grateful for that hindsight because it's not in my makeup, it's not in my upbringing, right? I didn't have those financial mentors in my life. The guardians, my parents bought and sold houses. You have to have very, very good credit to buy and sell houses the way my dad bought and sold houses, right? But because we were broke all the time, I just thought we were poor people, right? Because my mother bought the clothes at the secondhand store. I thought we were poor people because I was going to school with sugar and butter sandwiches. I thought we were poor people, but it was the circumstances and those things that we use to make life a little bit more bearable, that we can have something that we can delve into to take us away from whatever is bothering us, whatever is messing up our lives. That stress, you guys, right? And I'm sure you guys know that feeling because in addiction, that feeling is the same. For me, gambling addict. Oh my goodness. I would sit at the video lottery terminals for 8, 10 hours and just pull on those things looking for a jackpot. I was blowing $30,000 a year, which was pretty close to what I was making, which was pretty close to what I was making. It made me a liar, when I was married. I it was new to me, and in coping with being a married woman, this is right. I delve into a little bit and figured out, right, in that stress we look to disappear, and I disappeared at those machines, right? I wasn't a socializer, right? I wasn't truly an extrovert. I was an introverted extrovert. I could come to the surface when I had to, but I would prefer to be holed up, right? I would prefer to be contained, right? And yeah, I ruined a lot of relationships in that because it made me a liar, and it made me antisocial. But in my mind, I thought I was being social because I was amongst lots of people, but I wasn't connecting. I wasn't accommodating anybody. I wasn't even talking to anybody. And if anybody ever came up and talked to me, I'd make the conversation very, very short so they got the understanding that they were bothering me, right? Unless I hit a big one while they were standing there. And then in that case, they were just my lucky charm. Then they could just hang out with me. They didn't say anything. Right? So we all know those feelings of separating and leaving ourselves and moving into things that help us cope with or make us help us think that we're coping with whatever issues or stress that it was. For me, that was no question self sabotage because I treaded water. I lied to my husband where the bill money was, where my tips were. Oh, I had to put gas in the car. I had to get things at the grocery store, right? And I'd be making the cheapest low budget meals because I learned that. That's what my mother did when my dad went off gambling. Yes, my dad was a gambler too, but he liked poker games and he liked Vegas and Reno and he liked the horse races, right? That it was different for me. It was I just wanted to be by myself, right? I just wanted to be by myself. But there was also in my mind that opportunity. I could hit the big one, right? That dopamine. I could hit the big one and my life would be all sorted out, right? You don't hit big ones, right? If you hit $1,000 on one of those machines, within an hour or two, you could put that $1,000 right back into the machine. So it was easy for me to blow $30,000 a year. Hello, Melvin. I told I told the blood test lady that I would see her again in 3 months. She laughed. Why did she laugh, Melvin, that you would see her in 3 months? Maybe you don't have, well, I would, yeah, go back in 3 months. I would encourage that, especially when I said that I'm going in and I'm going to get a check. I'm going to get a full checkup. I haven't had one in years. I'm not even going to say how many years. It's been so many years. I am grateful for my good health, but I do not want to be in that system, right? Having one doctor fill out a prescription for me because his buddy's a pharmacist and right, or his buddy's the guy who invented that drug, or he doesn't know what the problem is but this might work, right? I don't want to be that person. I'm somebody who believes, truly I believe what you think about is realized. I don't think about my health except to be grateful because you guys hear me do my affirmations. I'm so grateful for my good health because I truly don't know if I could do what I'm doing right now if it wasn't for my good health, right? I've never had a headache in my entire life. I've never had a bleeding nose in my entire life. I've only broken, you can see my baby finger. I've broken it 5 or 6 times. I broke it a couple of months ago again. But yeah, it's permanently, it's crooked, crooked, crooked. So I can't say I've never broken a bone, right? But I believe it's in my affirmations I've been doing, I believe, since I was a small child, right? You know, starting with my dad and my grandmother saying, Cindy, it's in what's in the inside that counts, not the outside, right? It is in the lessons because the outside does count. It does count because growing up into an adult and making some choices for myself, one of those choices was to shed all that weight. If you don't know, I made it up to 311 pounds by the time I was, I think, 25 years old. I was over 300 pounds. And I had an amazing family doctor that I saw all the time. And, it wasn't my idea, right? But he put a word in for me, and he got a referral to see somebody who did something called a gastric bypass. These days, you just get little rubber bands and tie them around your stomach. But, right, when they were doing it in my time, it was like 1987. Um, yeah, they were cutting out a big part of your intestine and stapling out a lot of your stomach, right? And so I lost a lot of weight. And when I lost that lot of weight, I don't know, maybe, right? I didn't feel that way, right? But I could tell the attention that I was getting. It was because it was so obvious. It was attention that I had never gotten in my entire life. And I was getting attention from guys who wouldn't have even given me the time of day, right? When I was 311 pounds, I was grateful when I had that operation that I had dear loves in my life that I knew who cared for me and who didn't care for me. But again, in that attention and then having something that I always dreamed of as a child or as a teenager, as a young adult, to be slim, right? Didn't recognize it. You could lose all that weight, that things don't hang properly. And yet, even in that span, because I was so happy because I met my husband at that point with my sagging boobs to the ankles, right? From a sagging sack of skin that hung below my knees, right? I live in Manitoba, Canada, if you don't know, where your emotional well being is just as important as your physical well being. Another incentive for Americans to want to be Canadians. But not only did I get that gastric bypass, but I got a couple of boob jobs and I got a couple of tummy tucks, right? And I could have had more, right? Because my emotional well being was just as important as my physical well being. And even before I had that operation, I had found my husband, that he loved me anyway. And I was so happy. I was so happy. That was my inside showing. My husband saw my inside. But for most people, they didn't see my inside. They only saw my outside, right? They only saw my outside. And when my grandmother and my father would say to me, and I lived on that. Oh my goodness, I lived on that. It was such a painful, painful childhood and teenage years. It got me by, it got me through when they would say to me, "Oh, Cindy, it's the inside that counts, not the outside." For in the end, in losing all that weight, to come face to face with the reality that yes, the outside does count. That's the world that we live in. That's the human part of us, right? And in getting those wires mixed up, right? And that's a simple example there, right? In getting those wires mixed up between the human and the soul, right? Because the soul just sees the beautiful, it just sees what's good, right? Where the human, well, it's kind of crazy town out there. And if you're highly sensitive, if you're empathic, you run on those senses, those spidey senses, and you feel that intent, right? You feel that intent. But probably like me, That's all you do is you feel it, right? Because it's not something that anybody else is going to recognize, right? I felt that intent, and I felt that intent by people that other people just thought that they were angels, right? That they were the be all to end alls, like they could do no wrong, right? And there was blowback in that. Oh, then going back to Rabbi Jacobson, he said, silence is a form of consent. Silence is a form of consent, right? I'm not big on turning the other cheek, right? There are times for our own safety. Sometimes you have to give that consideration. You have to forgive, right? My father sometimes could not stand up to my mother, and so had to do his work a little bit in the background so he wouldn't notice, or she wouldn't notice what was going on, that I was getting primed. My mother was positive it was going to be my sister Tracy. My sister Tracy was amazingly successful, but all that investment, and I'm happy for her. There is not one iota of jealousy for anybody in my life or outside of my life, or for any circumstance, for any person, or for any soul. It's just not part of my makeup. Why? Because of the acceptance, because of my own realization and my own reality by those lessons I received in my childhood, right? My teenage years, my young adulthood. And even in my adulthood, those lessons keep coming to me. Oh, because it would mean I hadn't died. Well, then in that case, Melvin, I would have said, see you in 10 years, not in 3 months. I would have said, see you in 10 years, which is just might be the advice that I'll take for myself when I go for this checkup. I don't know what I'm going to do. I was talking a moment ago about my family doctor. He was absolutely amazing, and he went on my behalf and got me a referral to see somebody who was a specialist. And it by then it was a very dangerous operation, and they had quit doing it in a lot of places. I didn't realize that they were coming up with new procedures to do the exact same things, like the band and stuff. But gastric bypass is a very dangerous operation. That's a duodenum. They block off, in cutting off the stomach. They cut off the duodenum, which is the organ that processes sugar. When you have this operation, you can't get diabetes. I It's impossible for me to get diabetes. Um, My grandmother had diabetes. My grandmother was blind on my mother's side. She was blind, and she was missing her legs already. And when I gotten to recognize and spend time with her. Um, so it's in my family. I have two sisters with diabetes. For sure, being 311 pounds, it should have been my fate. It would have been my fate. Without that, it wasn't an interference. It was when somebody steps in on your behalf, because it was a gift. I didn't even know about the operation, in all honesty. 1987, right? I wasn't online. I might have read something in a magazine or heard it on the news, but I never thought it was a possibility for myself. And he gave me that gift. He was such a good doctor. Every time I got sick, he'd never write out a prescription, never said, Cindy, go meditate. I never meditated. Right at that time, I wasn't woke up to any of these ideas. I had no idea. He did, but I had no idea. And what a gift it was that he gave to me. And I hope wherever he is now, I'm sure he's long past. But let's send a wish that if he is back already, that he's in a life that rewards him for that gift that he gave me, because it just opened up my eyes and just right, like the Quick got me to the next lesson, right? Got me to the next lesson, which got me to the next lesson, which got me to the right, and finally I'm here. But this is only a lesson too. There are lots of lessons down the road. Okay, you guys, I don't know what that conversation is. I mentioned Rabbi Jacobson a couple of times tonight, so I'm going to go back into this for a minute. Silence is a form of consent. Okay, I'm going to say in that job that puts the roof over my head. You know, I said when I came in live today that, even though I procrastinated in making a move that I know I should have made over a year, I should have made this move over a year ago. It was somebody whose energy did not rub well with me. But I also recognize in that interaction, my soul rubbed her just as bad. But I played by the rules, right? She was the authority, and I served her the best that I could without the bonuses, right? If we were friends, right? If I was her assistant manager, one of the reasons I had to step down because I couldn't serve that energy. And I moved with that energy because I needed that roof over my head, or I thought I needed that roof over my head. And I procrastinated in making a decision. Well, I had already made the decision, but I just wasn't taking the action on that. But maybe I was, because sometimes it's in the timing of things. The timing was perfect, you know. Um, I had gotten enough hours in that considered me full time, which would allow me to have benefits if I didn't have a job. I was able to give 2 weeks' notice and be able to have an amazing last 2 weeks of saying goodbyes to all my favorite customers and to all those people that I had been serving for those 5 years in that job that put the roof over my head. So I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave there, right? But I knew what was the point, because nobody was going to believe me, right? How do you say this one's got bad energy? This is a what do you call them? Energy vampire. This one's a narcissist. This one's going for my jugular, because nobody will believe me, right? The point is, silence is a form of consent. I arranged it the best way that I could. So I would have the best cush underneath the fall. I was in dangling heights. I knew it was going to happen. When it was going to happen, how it was going to happen, and who was going to make it happen. It was going to be by my choice, right? If it was going to be uncomfortable for her, then it was going to be uncomfortable for her, right? But I was going to play by the rules. I was going to whistle while you work. And then what I would do, I would come home and I go, you can imagine in my head, because I'm saying it, right? That energy was so bad, and it took away all the joy, all the service that I could bring to the table. By the time I got home, it was zero. because it would be taken away from me as soon as I would step in to pick up my shift for the day. That wasn't always the case, but this was a new authority in the job that put the roof over my head. It's not the way it started out, but it was the way that it was ending. And so, I wasn't jealous in that, but there was bitterness. And I have to be honest in that because I needed my job, right? The mission statement for the job that puts the roof over my head was to help people exactly like me. I almost ended up homeless over COVID. They saved my butt. I owed everything to this company that had taken me on, and they treated me so well. But what was the point? Nobody was going to believe me, right? So I just gave my notice when I thought the timing was perfect, right? And the timing I do believe was as perfect as it could be. But I was thinking when I left, right? Nobody's going to believe me anyway. A week, I'm going to say I did the best that I could in the planning and in the timings of everything. 3 weeks before I quit, I had an opportunity to talk to the big, big boss. The big, big boss, right? The big leader, because that's what she was. She was a leader. She was totally different from this other one. The other one was the authority, right? The authority, the big authority, was actually a leader, and she was very kind. And I laid everything out on the table because I had come to the end, right? I'm about to let go of that branch, and I'm about to fall. So however the cards lay out, that's how the cards are going to lay out. And we talked for about an hour and a half, and I filled her in almost everything after the conversation. Of course, you go, "Oh, I wish I told her this," or "I wish we talked about that." But again, I'm a believer that things come across my path for an hour, and if or for a reason. And if it didn't pop into my mind in the moment of that conversation, whatever the conversation was, it was enough. So when I did give my 2 weeks notice, because I was afraid I would have to go even higher than that, right? Don't turn the other cheek. I can't turn the other cheeks because I was doing to the rest of the staff what I did with my own sisters when I was a kid, standing behind a wall, just peeking out every once in a while to make sure everything was okay, right? Knowing that I would be the source of the attention if I was visible, but it was much safer for me, right? And then just pop out if it got too much for them, that they would go after somebody else. And then that's when I would I would pop out. But that's not healthy, and that's triggering because that's what I did when I was a kid, and I was doing that with the people that I was working with. It was not a healthy environment for me, even though the moments, right, when they're not around, I could be myself, but there's always that underlying course of, right, because, well, that's what they do. But nobody was going to believe me. So I gave my notice. So I beat myself up for the past 2 weeks, right? That I didn't turn the other cheek, right? Silence is a form of consent. I didn't say anything. But then I remembered 3 weeks before, I laid it all on the table to the big, big boss. Maybe not the biggest or highest where I could have gone, where I really thought I had to go, right? I had to go because I was looking out for the organization that looked out for me. That's the way I felt. But I think this works out better because, right, that authority knew I had that conversation, right? And that authority is going to be on good behavior, but you can't change nature, right? Nature surfaces and shows itself and presents itself, and and I believe that leadership heard me when I laid it on the table, so I didn't turn the other cheek, right? An old Cindy might have not said anything, would have just been on their way, or would have fought the great battle, right? In sticking up for my rights and stuff. And that's still a little bit of concern because, right, I do have to apply for my EI because I have not gone out and applied for any work right now, right? I just do not have that energy, right? But I'm making that movement to the best that I can, right? In those baby steps. And that's all that's expected of us. I'm in a toughie group. Like I said, I've been with the Stoics for a couple of weeks now. And they're a tough batch. They really are. The struggle of it, the work, the grind. But the lessons with the Stoics, the value of the Stoics, right? It's uh it's pretty incredible, and it's pretty close, right? Right. I don't want it to be. I'm not looking for stress. I'm not looking to grind. I'm not looking for struggle, right? But I'm ignoring it. Or I was ignoring it. I'm appreciating the lessons, and maybe I'll move on to another aspect of belief. Um, Maybe I'll stay in this one, right? I never know. Each one that I go into it thinking the possibilities and feeling and seeing and experience the familiarities that I always go in thinking, oh, maybe this is it, right? Takes all kinds to make the world. And I do believe I was made, right, to be one of a different kind. And I think it's an okay kind, right? That I can come in and see the world in a different way. Understanding it takes all kinds to make the world. We live in crazy town right now, right? But we have to take into consideration, right, that there are all kinds of human beings, all kinds. Okay, you guys, I don't think I'm going to pull a card tonight. I've been yapping enough. I'm going to take a couple of sips of my lukewarm coffee that I made for my life, and I'm going to call it a day. Tomorrow is going to be Mother Nature Day. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to get out and about outside. I haven't been feeling well in the past few days. The fever broke last night, so that was pretty awesome. And I'm actually where this thing. I don't know if you guys have ever seen one of these things. It's a thermostat. Thermostat, is that what you call it? It's for taking your temperature. And I don't know. I would suggest to anybody to grab one of these things if you come across. I don't know what they cost. I got them. They were donated, right? But they come with little caps. Comes with the case. You buy the little caps on them because you don't want to pass germs on. And all you do, and this one thing in this process, you can learn from all kinds of experiences. And that's the thing about the Stoics. They learn from their struggles. And I struggled the past few days. I struggled the past few days. But one of the things that I learned was and what a fever temperature is. And I knew, right? I cap a fresh cap. It's only my ears anyway, so I don't have to change it every single time. There's a little plastic cap on there. All you do is you hit the button, light comes on, you stick it in your ear, you wait for the buzz, you pull it out, and it tells you your temperature 37.2. Pretty good. It should be 36 something, but in my highest, I was at like 98.3, 98.4. I was probably higher than that the day before, but I just made it a point yesterday when I got up just to keep taking my temperature because I did feel that I had a temperature. But, I'm just throwing that in there. It's a brawn. It's a brawn. It's amazing. But I was thinking, my sister going in for quadruple heart bypass. She got a cold. Every time she gets a cold, it turns into pneumonia. I think I'm going, there's like 20 caps, plastic caps in there. I think I'm going to give this to her. And if I should come across another one, grateful for my good health that I don't need this often. But I think this would give my sister a little sense of security to know that she could, and I'll explain good temperature and bad temperature so that she can check herself. It's so simple and so accurate. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. When you come across a good product, you got to give it a shout out. I can imagine like the moms. I hope that's not something you stick in your bum. I guess you probably, yeah, I guess you probably could. I'm sure the first time I did it, yeah, there we go. Just to make sure everybody can see in the picture that they're sticking it in their ear. I don't know. Maybe you can stick it in your bum. I don't know. Works quite well in the air. So what's the point of doing it the other way? Okay, you guys, I am babbling. Thank you, Melvin, for popping into my live tonight. Hannah, too, yesterday. And yeah, you guys, have a great day. If you're watching this in the morning, I came into my live. It's always my intent to do it sometime during the course of the day, but being the procrastinator that I am, I'll wait until it's like bedtime. And then I show up just so I can say, right, I showed up. But it's what I can offer in the moment. And I got to appreciate that, in those lessons that I've gotten, that I understand that I can do it in baby steps. Why? Because I'm creating the best human being I possibly can, right? The best human being. Understanding, right, is just not me. Okay, you guys. That's my good cheer. See you tomorrow.